My name is Margaret Jack, and today I'm presenting work done with Sopheak, Chann, Stephen Jackson, and Nicola, Dell. Our paper is called Networked Authoritarianism at the Edge, the Digital and Political Transitions of Cambodian Village Officials. This paper describes how village-level officials, relatively new to the internet, use popular digital platforms, particularly Facebook, on smartphones to supplement and extend long-standing patterns of information control and authoritarian power in Cambodia. In our findings, we show that these officials use these tools to monitor local affairs, report to the central government, and promote local government activities, practices which intimidate villagers and encourage their political withdrawal and self-censorship. We conclude with some thoughts about the nature of chilling effects and their links to historical violence. I've been doing research in Cambodia broadly on digital tools and social change since January 2014, including a 20-month research period from June 2017 until January 2019. This paper emerged from a study on the ways that Cambodians across demographics think about privacy using Facebook. Scholars and activists are increasingly describing the ways that states regulate and control new digital tools. Citizen Lab defines information controls as techniques, practices, regulations, or policies which strongly influence the availability of electronic information for social, political, ethical, or economic ends. Networked authoritarianism refers to the phenomenon of information controls enacted by authoritarian governments to extend their reach. In Cambodia, Facebook has largely and increasingly been used by the central government for propaganda and administrative tasks. At the end of 2017, in anticipation of the July 2018 national election, the ruling party ordered closures of non-state media outlets and arrested 9 people for statements against the Prime Minister on Facebook in late 2017. They then arrested the president of the opposition party and dissolved that party, replacing commune-level opposition leaders with ruling party officials. There have been more arrests through 2018 and 19, and the situation continues to evolve. This so-called authoritarian crackdown is part of a long history of the ruling party's controlling tactics since the Cambodian conflicts of the 1970s. But in this paper, we focus our story on a different dimension of networked authoritarianism and demonstrate a more mundane enactment of information control. By focusing not on the central government, but rural, older civil servants, we see that information controls are often imperfect and part of everyday bureaucratic practices that have long-standing roots in villages. Looking at information control this way gives a more nuanced understanding of the origins of chilling effects, or the intimidation of citizens so that they refrain from oppositional speech and action. The 3 villages that we conducted this research are in southern and western Cambodia, located here, here, and here. The rural nature of these sites and their distance, both physically and metaphorically, from the centralized power in Phnom Penh is what we refer to when we describe the edge of networked authoritarianism. So how are these local officials using these tools? The most common way is that they are supplementing and extending long-standing information control through monitoring. The police and village chiefs work closely together to monitor local affairs. They keep track of everyone who moves in and out of the village. They are monitored on paper documents such as lists of residents. These documents are shared in face-to-face commune-level meetings weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on the particular village and its distance from the commune-level town. Since 2017, in addition to these traditional methods, local authorities also started to use Facebook Messenger groups to discuss community activities and perform casual surveillance on their villagers. Across all 3 villages, participants in the Facebook groups include village chiefs, deputies, police, and commune-level officials. Commune-level officials manage and administer the groups. These groups are now a supplement to continued in-person meetings and paper lists. These groups, however, are also a new form of surveillance. The officials use the groups to report when new people enter the village as a way to monitor populations and political party enrollment, something that is noted as a key part of the village officials' workflow. Another important function of Facebook for the local officials is to report to the centralized government. For instance, here's an image of a document that local authorities in one of our villages sent to the Ministry of Rural Development. The officials used to handwrite and deliver the document. Now they send this report as a photograph via Facebook Messenger. One of our participants said that he is happy that he is able to send the report by messenger this way because it replaces the need to deliver the report separately, which often required a special trip on motorcycle from the village to the larger town. As much as we show the ways that Facebook and smartphones are used to extend governance, we also show the limits to such practices in this setting. All of the officials that we spoke to have their own smartphones and Facebook accounts, but they have various technical literacies, some telling us up front that they do not feel comfortable using their smartphones at all. The local officials worry a lot about the ways that information on their phone could be used against them. One participant told us that he worries about hackers, but he just doesn't know how to protect against them. Sometimes he just avoids using Facebook and doesn't do things he isn't familiar with. The local officials unanimously told us that knowing how to use Facebook in a more sophisticated way is a way to succeed and get ahead in their jobs as officials. Though these bureaucratic activities I've been describing may seem mundane, and the administrators have limited technical literacy, they are having real effect on how non-state actors think about using Facebook. This administrative activity, including the monitoring, has contributed to widespread chilling effects, a phenomenon that occurs when ordinary citizens stop using the internet for dissent due to intimidation. Many villagers now act in strategic, protective ways in response to the intimidation and felt presence of local officials. They withdraw from overt political activity and refrain from identifying with any oppositional thinkers, both offline and online. These bureaucratic controls on Facebook, which I've described, are contributing to a wide sense of fear and intimidation on the platform, and this is tapping into historical fears about surveillance dating back to the Khmer Rouge period. To start to conclude, in this paper, we offer a picture of the mundane, imperfect, and quotidian nature of state information controls. In so doing, we trouble and render ordinary the sometimes excessively top-down and centralized accounts of state power that have characterized the literature on networked authoritarianism. At this dynamic moment in Cambodian history, we see forms of experimentation as historically powerful actors seek to re-implement modes of bureaucratic and political authority and control, in part through the management and deployment of general-purpose platforms like Facebook. Tools are being used within a context where older media modes, such as meetings and paper documents, are still used regularly. Showing this mixed ecology shows how networked authoritarianism works within a historical setting, that new forms and materialities build on older ones. Yet, this material shift does have consequences. For instance, it marks a new way in which Facebook, a transnational technology company, has power in a public sector setting. Our final argument is that officials are nevertheless still able to chill villagers' speech and contribute to the closing down of a public space for discursive dialogue. Non-state actors are afraid of the potential power and negative consequences of Facebook and smartphones, particularly because of the political context of Cambodia right now. Through everyday administrative activity, the government is visibly present on this channel of communication and softly intimidates non-state actors into chilling effects, i.e. refraining from oppositional speech on Facebook. Networked authoritarianism conjure for villagers the historical links between information control and violence, and the effectiveness of these tactics on chilling speech is often rooted in villagers' memories of fear, which is based on the history of the country and particularly their relationships to these officials. They often have personal and intimate memories of these village leaders through the war periods. Thank you very much for watching our talk.